determine how to make better crops and get better yield and all that stuff. I don't actually really understand because it's agriculture and I've never learned it. Yeah, but somehow I work on software for them anyway. Let's see. I've kind of dabbled all over the years on everything. I've learned probably a dozen programming languages over the years. I've done desktop apps and mobile apps and web apps and server apps. And are there other apps? I don't know. What else? Michael added in my artificial pancreas, which is a good talking point that people like to, I like to adequately confuse people about as well. What else makes me tick? I do conference talks and workshops, and which is probably where like a good chunk of you probably know me from some form of some conference somewhere, which is also how I met Michael. And what else? Yeah, I've started Twitch live streaming some open source development on a project I'm working on called Code Thesaurus. So that's been both interesting and actually seeing my idea come to life after like half a decade, and then also finally like become real and people actually contributing to it, and also that I'm streaming it on Twitch, which feels scary and daunting at first, but it's actually become really kind of nice to do. So that's a lot of what's making me tick right now, I guess, in a nutshell. And then Saturday, the National Center for Women in Information Technology, or NCWIT, they have every year an award ceremony for high school girls and college girls that are doing things in computing and just interested in like computing in general. And so they offer awards to these people. And so both in my last city, Kansas City, and here in Pittsburgh, I've been a part of their committees. And so Saturday we get to award like another 40 awards to high school girls. And it's weird that it's on remote. It's not like a ceremony in a fancy building anymore, but you know, we made it work last year. We're gonna make it work this year. So yeah, that's also on my mind because I have a whole bunch of stuff to do before Saturday. That's Sarah in a nutshell. Thanks. Have a good night.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks.
Wait, I have to come back. Okay.
That's super cool. Thank you. There's so many little interesting tidbits in there. Frankly, my first question is, what is Code Thesaurus? I want to hear more about this.
Code Thesaurus. Good question. I'm glad you asked. Hashtag shameless plug. No, so it started, I'll tell the story because I have time. Like several years ago, on a Women in Tech Slack I'm on, somebody had popped into my DM speech. He's like, hey, Sarah, can you help me debug a problem? I'm like, I don't know you, but sure, why not? we're kind of a friendly Slack. We're kind of like that. Sure, let's do it. And she's like, it's in Ruby. And I'm like, well, I've seen a tiny bit of Ruby, but I hadn't done it at the time. And she said like, well, you know, I can try and help you through it. And so she showed me the thing and like, this is what it's doing. This is what it should be doing. I'm like, oh, I think your problem's right here, but I didn't know how to fix it. And so I started looking through Ruby's website and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I did so many pages of stuff. I just can't really filter that fast. And was trying to Stack Overflow things. I couldn't quite figure it out. I'm just like, I really just want a thing. And it's like, this is how you do it in the language I know. And this is how you do it in the language I don't know. And I just wish I could find a site like this. I have searched for years. I could never find it. And, you know, it's kind of one of those fears of like, oh crap, do I have to be the one that makes this thing? And I found like cheat sheets to where people had made just like, oh, Ruby's kind of like Python. Here's like a few things you could see to tell the difference. I'm like, that's not like as deep as I need, you know, and it's not any two languages. And so I got this idea, like, how would I do this? How would I make a site that you could pick any two programming languages and just look at them side by side? And I'm like, Java, C++, C#, PHP, JavaScript, they're all so similar that they're super easy to compare. And then there's Perl, Prolog, Fortran, Haskell, you know, and Scala I've learned recently. Just like, these are ballparks across from each other. It's like, how do we compare Russian and Japanese? Like, oh. And so I kind of had to think through, like, okay, how would I structure something to actually compare languages that are very similar and nothing alike? And I finally kind of brewed on it for a really long time. I'm like, okay, I think I have an idea how I might do this. And then also just kind of thought like, okay, how would I store this information? How about a database? Everybody stores things in a database. And I'm like, I don't want to do this alone. So how do I open this up? Like, well, I don't want to give people creds to write stuff to a database. That's just a bad idea. Let's not do that. And I'm like, okay, SQL dumps. Nobody wants to edit a SQL dump. That's a terrible idea. No, let's not do that. XML, it's ugly, it's gross. No, let's not. YAML's easy, except if you have anything that requires like specific formatting, then you can't do that. I'm like, JSON, I guess, is like my only option. So I decided like to store all the language data in JSON. And then also just kind of thought like, okay, how do I separate the website out from like the language data? And then I had to crunch that for a long time. And then I kind of thought like, okay, what about things that are very similar but have different names? What's the difference between a function and a method and a subroutine and they're similar, and some of them are the same. Like a Java method is a C++ function, they are the same, but like when I learned Visual Basic, subroutines are not the same as a function. They have the same idea, but they're different. And it's just like, crap, I have to think this through. And there's just like so many layers to all of this. And at a conference once, I won a 1 hour of pair programming with Justin Searles, if you know him. It was super random, and I'm just like, I have no idea what I would pair program with it. But then I thought like, hey, why don't I just discuss this idea and see what he thinks of it? And so I did 1 hour with him, and he's just kind of like, oh, this is a cool idea, but what about this? This sounds too easy. And I'm like, well, this is the exception. And like, oh, that makes sense. Well, what about this? Well, you have to do this instead. Okay. And so finally, he just like, at the end of this 1 hour call, it's just like, yeah, I wouldn't really change much of anything. You've kind of thought this through. And over the course of a few Hacktoberfest, I had slowly chipped away at this, but then at the suggestion of a friend, she's just like, tell everybody about it. Like, it's not done. If I don't get it done, then I'm going to disappoint and feel like a failure. It's like, tell them anyway. I'm like, and so, it was a self-conference prize 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. And yeah, so I finally just like posted a screenshot, be like, hi, I'm hopefully working on a thing this Hacktoberfest of 2020. And this is what it'll look like. And it'll let you look at languages, side by side with ones you don't. And like 100 retweets and 200 likes later, I'm just like, oh, holy crap, this is intimidating. Yes, it is, Michael. That is the link to it. And so, yeah, slowly it got to a point where it was publicly releasable in October. I've still been chipping away at it ever since. And now up to 24 contributors? I have a little counter on the bottom of the website because I think it's important to give people credit for this. 24 other people contributed. I think there's like 5 PRs open that I need to go review, but it's kind of weird to see such a, like, the tool I've needed for years, like, become real, and other people actually say like, whoa, that's a cool idea. So I'm sort of excited and humbled and like a big mesh of things all together. So that's good, the source.
Isn't that the thing when it's just like, I want this in the world, but nobody else is going to build it. I think that
somebody else better than me is probably going to do it. Why has somebody not done it yet? Like,
right, exactly. That's super cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions about that? Anything they're curious about, or we can, or Sarah, do you have more you want to talk about? Do you want to take this a different direction?
I'll take it whatever direction people want to.
Excellent.
Is there a shot that you could do a demo of that before this session is over?
Sure.
You don't have to do it right now. You might
fantastic.
want to think about how to pull that off, or if it's possible. But yeah, that's kind of cool. I'd like to see it in action.
Sure. Yeah, I could do that. I have the code PyCharm open left over from working on it, and the website pulled up. I could do it.
Would you like to do that now or later, or what's your preference? I think now is a great time. I'm going to go
Now's a
ahead.
great time. All right, let me.
I think you should be able to share it. It looks like, let me see here. I might have to enable it,
Let's
but
drag that tab.
okay, we're good now. Go for it.
Good. All right. Where's share screen? That's the big green button that says share screen. All right. So this is, I'll zoom in just a little. So I'm going to choose a couple things that I know exist at the moment. Let's see. So let's say I know C#, but I don't know Python. So I can take a look, and, you know, like the idea of Boolean is pretty much the same in both languages. But in Python, an int as a native type isn't supported. It's actually an object internally to the language. So there's that, but there's no integer object. It's a primitive in C#, so that's not there. And kind of, I found it interesting that a complex number is a primitive type in Python. So I'm just like, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, so that's kind of the basic idea. And for, you know, two languages that are pretty far apart, this is kind of a not bad thing. I'm slowly working on adding, so control structures are like loops and ifs. Data types are fairly obvious, I think you just saw. Functions, methods, and subroutines. You know, that's kind of, for the moment, they're all kind of grouped together. I may think about like ways to work with that. But one of the things I did struggle with was kind of going back to this idea, I guess, is what's the difference between somebody hasn't implemented this idea in the file somewhere versus this doesn't actually exist in this language. And so I kind of had to think through like, well, you know, I guess I can null out the idea of an 8-bit integer in C# doesn't exist. So therefore, like the placeholder in the JSON file is there, but it's empty. And so that kind of distinguishes, like we have looked through this and determined this doesn't exist. The other thing is I could put a Boolean in there that probably say like this doesn't exist. But that's a basic idea. The cool thing is for testing, the first thing when I was like building this up, I'm just like, okay, I have C++, Python, and Java. So there's like two languages that are similar and two languages that are different. That's easy. And data types. And that's all I'd started with was there's 3 languages and just data types. And so it's really kind of cool to see somebody came in and did C#, somebody came in and did Haskell, you know, I think people filled out the rest of Python, Rust, Scala. Literally when I was streaming this one day on Twitch, somebody is like, hey, I'm new here. What you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing code thesaurus, blah, 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 blah. And like, oh, cool. You know, they left for a bit and came back like, I made a PR where I added nim. I'm like, what? So nim is like this Python-like language that has like a lot of Rust's security memory things built into it. I'm like, it's kind of cool. He just like came in and in the course of 2 hours on my stream, he'd already like submitted a new language. And I'm like, that's exactly what I want, is like, I want the popular ones, but also like what happens if you do the esoteric languages and stuff like that too. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then I also wanted the idea of like, well, if you can compare them side by side, what if I just like pulled them up here, you know? We haven't done functions and yeah, I know Python data types exist. So you could just look it up like one thing at a time if you wanted just like a quick reference. And code, it's kind of easy, except for the part I haven't finished working on yet. So it's a Django app. And really the website is super simple. Like the most complex part is how do I take 2 languages and mush them together? Oh, hi, cat. And then the thesauruses are kind of, no, I don't want to move. Where the magic is. Kitty, you're being destructive. So I have this idea of the meta language, and that's like every possible thing that could exist in any language. And then so you implement these in each of your files. And like C++, what's a control structure look like? Well, for each loop looks like this. And such like that. So it's, I'm proud of the way I structured this because I've abstracted out the language data from the website, but also made it so it's really easy to contribute to. People new to open source can come in. I also have all the documentation on like how to do things. Bring my microphone back, but so you can learn about the project, but also how do you add new things into it. So I talk about that in there. And it's easy for like beginners to open source, newer programmers, experienced programmers, all the above. So I've had the full course of people already kind of contributing to it. So that's kind of the nutshell as the wind shuts my door in the background. Yeah.
Thank you. That's super cool.
That was awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm hoping to do shortly is version languages. So like Python 2 and Python 3, if anybody's worked in there, you know, the big uproar of people that wrote stuff in Python 2 need to convert it to Python 3, but they haven't done it. They waffle too long. And finally, after much dragging of feet, the Python Foundation just said, like, we're not updating 2 anymore. You have to do it this time. You have to upgrade. We're not touching it. And people are like, oh, no, please. And so they like dragged it out like 2 more years. And finally, like, I think it's the end of 2019. They're just like, we're done. No more. And so I thought it'd be cool to be able to also say, can I compare Python 2 to Python 3 or PHP 5 to 7 to 8 to, yeah, I think 8 just came out. And
or C++ on different hardware platforms.
Yeah, and I thought about that too, because I have C++ in here, but it could not necessarily be correct depending on which environment you're on.
Right.
Like Visual Studio C++ is different than GCC C++, which is different than, yeah. So I absolutely love that idea, as well as, you know, BASIC. I learned on a Commodore 64, but there's also QBasic, there's also Visual Basic and visualbasic.net. So there's 4 I've looked at once upon a time. And, you know, they're all basic, but they're all varying degrees of it. So yeah, I definitely think I would love to see variations of everything too.
BASIC is really not standardized. It's just whatever.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Code the Source in a nutshell. I also worked hard on code of conduct and trying to make sure like people commenting on issues are friendly. I explained everything I'm expecting out of those and all of that.
Yay.
Yeah, because I want it to be open and inviting. And I know I'm working on it. Yeah, so good issues. I put good first issue or help wanted for most of these things. That one's not a good first issue, but it is a help wanted. And then I tried to put in things for the most popular languages. So by all means, I'm not restricted to these. I would love to see more, but you know, just kind of if people are browsing randomly on GitHub, like, hey, what's something simple I could contribute to? And just like, and people have found it that way, which is kind of impressive to me. I didn't know people would, but occasional bugs in there. And then there's a few things like I need to update a thing on Heroku, which is pretty much only something I can do. But like we got a few people already working on stuff. So yeah.
Great to see the community jumping in.
Yeah, it makes me really happy. And I also think it's really important. So we got all the Hacktoberfest tags over here. So it's people got credit for contributing last year. They're going to get credit for contributing this year. Yep.
Thank you for showing us that, Sarah.
Shameless plug over.
Anybody else have questions, things that interest you, things that Sarah brought up in her intro that you want to know more about?
I'm boring. I knew it.
No,
I knew it.
Come on. How about let's do this. Do you want to talk about the artificial pancreas and kind of what you're doing with that? Because I saw that you gave a lightning talk at CodeMash. It was really interesting. Yeah. And I think that other people might find that interesting as well.
Sure. Yep. This is it.
Ooh.
Yep. All right. That's it. Now, I think I pulled the same joke at CodeMash. Let's pull it out of its pouch, and it's in a protective Tic Tac box, obviously, but it's an Intel Edison chip. and then it's on a 900 megahertz transmitter board. And so what this does is it communicates with my insulin pump, which is only talks on 900 megahertz. There's no good place and address, so it's just gonna don't tell anyone. And then it's on my stomach, so I can't really show it at the moment. But I have a glucose sensor, and so every 5 minutes it sends a Bluetooth signal to my phone and says what my blood sugar is. So right now it's come on 85 and kind of holding fairly steady. So I can also like see a little graph of the stuff that's going on, and I could show the full web pagey view as well. Everybody has a dashboard for their pancreas, right?
So it's less poking yourself, right?
Oh, there's still plenty of poking. My insulin pump has to inject insulin into my stomach or my arm. Well, not really my arm, I guess. Some people do their back or their leg or something. The glucose sensor has a few different places it can go on. But the artificial pancreas is the one that kind of makes the two talk to each other. So they don't talk normally. There's no capability there. And then the other thing is my phone uploads stuff to the cloud. So this is my Heroku instance that kind of stores. Oh, no, come on, zoom in. There we go. Yeah, so it's all sorts of handy information for me. I realize it's a bunch of garbage to you all, but so that's my blood sugar right now. I got it 4 minutes ago, so here in about a minute, you'll see that possibly change. I can see like it went down to in the last 5 minutes. The amount of insulin I have right now, which is, they say on board, so it's insulin on board, is negative 0.6 units. And what that basically means is I have 0.6 lower than expected. And the reason for that is because it's dropping. It's just tried to keep my insulin low. So I actually have less than I normally would have. This is how old the tubing is. I need to change it. This is how old my sensor is. So it's 10 days. So it's fairly new. I changed it yesterday. This is the insulin age. So how long it's been setting in my insulin pump. This is the battery age. I had to replace the pump battery 13 hours ago. That's my basal rate. So I have to have insulin 24/7. That's the amount it's dispensing every hour. And then over here, that's my artificial pancreas part, where I can actually see all the statistics it's calculated and what it thinks is happening. So basically what it's thinking is, this is, what is that? Based on my carbs, that's what's the direction my blood sugar should go. Based on my insulin, that's the direction my blood sugar should go. So kind of the middle ground between the two would be this little trend right here. So that's where it's predicting, what is that, 2.5 hours into the future? That's about where my blood sugar will be. So.
And this is something where industry, from what I understand, has really fallen behind because diabetics, they decided to kind of build this themselves. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yeah. So the medical tech industry has kind of waffled on, well, we can't build that. That's complicated. It's expensive. So much testing. All of the things could go wrong.
There's liability.
But also some diabetics have found like, hey, we reverse the Bluetooth signals on the glucose sensor. So we can actually use our own apps for that. So I use an open source app called XStrip to read my sensor. Somebody else figured out how to talk to the insulin, or one brand of insulin pump. And that's kind of where Open APS, the Open Artificial Pancreas System, came in, which is what my thing runs on. Some other people figured out an Omnipod. So it's a little thing that also can go on your arm or your stomach or whatever, but it has the insulin and the kind of all built in. So there's no tubes, just the whole thing goes on your arm. They reverse engineered how that works. So there's an iOS version of this that actually works with that. And then somebody figured out how to take the iOS code, make it work on Android. So now there's an Android app that also does the same thing. So there's several different like hacky open source solutions that have built this out, which is kind of cool. And hopefully it'll work. Let's try this. There we go. Okay. It's kind of small. Oh, wait. am I sharing? I am sharing. Password. So Sarborg is my artificial pancreas, obviously. Sarah Sarborg. That's its actual network name. But I can always pull out logs on what it's doing right now. So let's see if I were to parse out. So the last thing it was trying to do is it listens for interference. Once it determines there's no real interference, it starts talking to the pump, tries to figure out what time it is on the pump to figure out if it's out of sync. So if you do things on your pump that aren't like synced up, it kind of gets a little confused. So it tries to make sure they're synced up. It'll actually change the time on my pump, which I kind of love. I don't have to mess with that. But it'll check to see like if I have dosed any extra insulin that it hasn't recorded before. So it keeps track of that. Sees like, hey, that's the amount of carbs it has affected I should have in me. I think at the moment, that doesn't seem right. I don't know. I'm not looking too hard. So it also says based on its predictions of what my ratio of how much I eat to how much insulin I need, I should have like this amount. How much is my blood sugar expected to be differed from the trend that it's expecting? And based on that, it can say, you need less insulin, you need more insulin. Or, if you're like nose diving really fast, it can cut off like your whole supply to try and save you from a hypoglycemic attack. And then once it figures that out, this is kind of where it starts to predict the trends. And then it says, okay, I need to give you, where's it at? Yeah, basically, here's the suggestion for what it needs to dose me right now. So eventually I'm going to 86. That number is just fine. So it's not really going to adjust too much. That's like moving it down like 0.01 units an hour. And then it sends all that to the pump and then saves its stuff in the cloud and then it's done. So it waits 5 minutes for the next blood sugar value to repeat the process all over again. And then the cool part is, I made a little shortcut. You know what that ratio of how much insulin to how much food you eat is, or carbohydrates specifically. But it will predict if you're wrong. So it will say like right now I have it programmed to be 7 units. It's like, hey, you look like you're really 7.7. And then every hour, this is what's programmed by default into my pump. And it says, this looks like what you should have. So there's like this one, it's like a whole lot more at 5 a.m. for whatever reason. But usually it's been in the afternoon, it's been kind of lowering some of them. So at like 1 o'clock, it's saying like, hey, you need actually less here. So it's kind of cool that it every day it recalculates this over the course of 24 hours. So it kind of checks over everything and says, I think you need to adjust this. So it takes all that into account when it does things too. So it's really cool because it eliminates a lot of my need to start predicting what I think my body is going to do, because I only do that like a few times a day, or this is doing every 5 minutes. So it's what, 288 times a day, I think. So that's nerd. You hold your own artificial pancreas, nerd. No, I built it on my own, gosh darn it. And all the instructions are on GitHub. OpenAPS/OREF0, I think is the original algorithm. Yeah. So if you want, you can go pull down the code for artificial pancreases. So Loop, which is the iOS one, is also up there. Android APS, which is the Android specific version of this, is also up there. So the unfortunate part is you kind of have to take into account like what phone you have, what pump you have, and what sensor you have in order to determine what system you can use, or if you can use a system. So it's still very hacky. There's still a lot of stuff that hasn't been broken into yet, but that's kind of the basics of the artificial pancreas in a nutshell. And my blood sugar is good. See, 84. Yeah, and I know it's good because it stays in the green.
I'm super glad you're not going to pass out on us. I'll just tell you that.
There has been more than one conference talk where I started to have low blood sugar, and I'm just like, hi, everyone in the audience, hang on just a minute, and I'm like trying to scarf down some sugar, like it's kind of weird. Or when I give this talk and she's like, these are the good numbers. You want to stay in this range. Let's go look at my pancreas. And like the number is like sky high because I just ate lunch before it. And stress can actually usually make you go high anyway. So it's like a terrible example of like, look how good this thing works. I'm 156. Oh, that's terrible. Don't listen to me. But yeah. So I actually have over 2 years worth of data in the Heroku system, the app, the database. So it's kind of interesting. I always thought it might be fun to see some sort of experiment, but I don't know what that would be. So yeah, that's Starboard.
Nice.
And yes, this is a real website. Any of you can go to it any moment and spy on my pancreas.
I want to try this. First, get diabetes.
Yes.
No.
Diets of donuts and no, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. So I'm type 1. I've had a lot of type 2 people say like, can I get this? And I'm like, if you aren't on insulin, this won't work. And if you aren't on insulin that's fed into you all the time, this won't work. So it's really only type 1 people that mostly can get it. Like if you are a type 2 that relies on this, like you could possibly get it depending on sort of how stuff's configured in your medical world, I suppose. But
that is a cool app though. That is really cool.
Yeah.
It's also exciting that the community built it and
that
people came together and said, we want to solve this problem. Kind of like with Code Thesaurus, it's really, hey, this problem has not been solved and we think that we can do it. Let's give it a go.
Yeah, and there are some medtech companies that have started doing this. Like there are 2 out there in the world right now. They're closed source. You can't look at how they work. They're very conservative. So mine is very fine-tuned to me. I can go into JSON files and modify variables. And click on apps and mess with the settings here. The Medtronic one that's out in the world, it's just like, we're keeping you at 150. If you go over, we'll lower you. If you go lower, we're not touching anything because you're fine. I'm like, that's not great. Like I want to configure this, but I can't because that's just what they've set up. And I've also heard people say the sensors that come with that system are just terrible. Like they sometimes just don't work very often. So it's kind of sucky there. There's another company called Tandem where they make the pump that also does this, and it works with the Dexcom. So it's like 2 companies, but they've figured out, they talked to Dexcom and now they can work together. So that's kind of interesting. And then there's a company called Typepool that is working on taking some of this open source stuff and working with the medical tech companies to try and like bridge this gap between the hacky open source stuff and the closed source stuff that nobody wants to talk about. And say like, hey, what if we step in the middle and allow your closed stuff to work, closed source stuff to work with the open source stuff. And so they're trying to bridge that gap. And they've applied to have the first app that will do open source stuff on that. Yeah, they've applied to the FDA to get it approved. So it's kind of interesting to watch that world and how things are changing. It reminds me a lot of when Google Fiber came into Kansas City when I lived there. And, they were so good. Both the internet speeds of offering gigabit when nobody had it, as well as like the customer service. Like you book an appointment Friday at 3:00, they're there at Friday at 3:00. Like you booked it, that's when they're there. And everybody was flocking away from AT&T and Time Warner Cable. And, it forced them to actually get better. So it's been kind of interesting to see this as well, that all these hackers are, like, let's buy this 10-year-old insulin pump off eBay. And because it works so much better than this modern top of the line $12,000 pump, you would have to pay new out of pocket, or, if you're lucky, get insurance to pay for it. And so they're having to like slowly step it up. And I think that's kind of fascinating to watch.
Has this inspired you to break up in any other devices around your house
Oh, I'm
And,
always wanting to break open devices.
I've
been doing that as a
so.
kid. It was a blast. And I've also I was on a robotics team in college, and then took some digital circuitry classes in the first round of college. So the second round of college was when I was in the robotics team. So I ended up having a lot of hardware experience. So once upon a time, I'd hack open devices like, wow, this is cool. I don't know what's going on. But now I can open up devices like, wow, this is cool. I have a pretty good idea of what's going on, which is sort of fun. Yeah, I mentor an all girls robotics team, like a first robotics challenge. And this year they kind of had to change it because we're not meeting in person. So the worldwide organization has made like smaller challenges they can do at home or with small groups in person if they have the capability. And one of the groups I mentor, which is an all girls team, they've invented a special armband that can work for autistic people to help them exercise better and more reliably. And so I sent them all the girls that were working on this Arduino kits. And so over Zoom, I was trying to walk them through like, okay, let's build. It's a terrible hacky prototype, but it can at least like show you the idea of this. And I drove 2.5 hours all over Pittsburgh delivering these kits, but it was so cool to just watch them like, I don't know what I'm doing. The wires are scary. And then eventually like they could push a button on the computer and the thing is like working. And it's like, oh, I built the thing, like, yeah, you built the thing. And there's now a provisional patent on it. So I know. So it's kind of cool to.
Oh, so if I forgot, you live in Pittsburgh.
I live in Pittsburgh.
Okay, so the thing I have to ask everybody who does robotics in Pittsburgh is, do you know Red Whitaker?
I don't.
The robotics guy at CMU. He has an entire following. It's a thing.
I'm pretty sure I know a dozen people at least that probably know this person, but I don't. I've only been here like 3 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like anybody's ever used the word cult. Okay, just they totally call it a cult.
There's a few culty things in Pittsburgh. It's
right.
Who else has questions for Sarah? Or just something else they'd like to discuss?
I would like more cats on camera, please.
Come here. I know. You're not happy.
First, the cat wanted to be on camera completely. Then now, not at all. No,
he was lazy and practically sleeping.
Oh,
Have you met a cat? That's kind of how they are. Aw, Jeremy's kitty's pretty too.
This is Theodosius. He's my 19-pound cat. Fun fact. I decided to finally measure them so I could buy harnesses. Mm-hmm. So they have I think it's a 14-inch neck and a 19-inch chest, which, so I finally bought this. I want to point out it's a small dog harness designed for pugs, Shih Tzus, and Jack Russell Terriers because, the cat ones don't actually fit. This is a 15 to 20-inch chest.
That's got to be some floof. If that cat's got a 14-inch neck, because I got a 16-inch neck.
I don't know. Come here. Let me measure you again. Come here.
We keep ordering different harnesses for my puppy. It's like his size keep changing, but I typically order it on Amazon. So small, medium. So far he is 8 months old and now he reached large size. So he's growing fast. Yep.
Okay. I think his neck is like 12 or 13. So that's slightly off, but.
Yeah, but it is fun to buy harness for them and leash. It's fun.
I could walk my last cat, which is pretty fun. So I always said I would do it, but I knew more than likely cat harnesses would not fit them. And I've been proven correct. Cat harnesses would not fit my cats. So they are very big. His brother's somewhere. Rorschach. I don't know where Rorschach is.
It's a great name.
That's a good name. He's the one with the gray spots on his back. So.
Yeah.
And Theodosius is my pure cuddle bug here. Good cats.
I joined really late, and I'm really bummed about it because both my sisters are diabetic and they both have the Dexcom and they both hate the Dexcom and the
Really?
app. And so we have talked several times about me building something for them, mostly as a joke, but this is inspiring.
Android or iOS?
They both have iPhones, which is
okay.
what really stops me because I'm an Android developer.
There's somebody that's been working on an app that's called Free APS, which is like free artificial pancreas system. And he's tried to take the open APS algorithms, which is the one that runs on my thing, and make them work on an iOS app because nobody's done that yet. Loop is a different set of algorithms. So he's trying to do that. That might actually be an app that does talk to Dexcom.
Yeah,
if they don't like the Dexcom app. Actually, it's funny because the Dexcom app isn't compatible with my phone. But somebody figured out how to
like it.
Yeah, somebody figured out
with her partner's phone.
Yeah, it's all a terrible system. But people have figured out how to hack Dexcom's app, and so they like decompiled it, and then you can go to a website and like fill out a few variables, and then they'll build you a custom version of this app that works on your phone. I find that absolutely hilarious.
That's impressive.
Yeah, which I'm pretty sure Dexcom knows about, and they don't like this, but their app only officially supports like 6 phones. I'm like, do you know about the Android universe? There's more than 6 phones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Her partner has like a Pixel 2 and it doesn't work on it. And she just got this Dexcom, so it would send him notifications and they immediately dropped support.
Yeah, it's all a mess. I'm not a fan, but I'm at least a fan of the system, which makes it a lot more tolerable.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, diabetics. Woo. No, we're not. Oh, okay. No, it's fine.
Diabetes I'll give you a high five.
Yes, broken pancreases. Woo.
Yeah.
All right. 11 minutes. What else? What else can we geek out about?
I want to give everybody else a chance if they have questions. But we could talk about Pittsburgh, some of the stuff you're doing in Pittsburgh. It sounds like the robotics team stuff is really awesome. I know that you've been involved in a couple of conferences there as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there's a local group called Code and Supply, and they're the largest tech community group in Pittsburgh. And every year, except probably this year, they've ran a different conference. So the first year was Abstractions in 2016. And then 2017 was something called Uptime, which is like a developer, a DevOps kind of conference. Abstractions was really just kind of a everything sort of conference. So it was 1,500 people, but talks on literally everything. So the goal is to try and be like as wide as possible on things. And then 2018 was Artifacts, which was a very small, cozy mental health and tech conference. And then 2019 was Abstractions 2. And then 2020 was a very broken conference system because there's a little global pandemic. And we had started talking about Artifacts, the second Artifacts, by the time that happened. And we struggled a lot with going, do we make this virtual? Will it be the same cozy, intimate? It's perfectly fine to talk about feelings and mental health things. And we decided we had to change up a lot of how we did things, but we did a like 2 hours across, or 2 hours times several different days. So we did, I think, 3 days of 2 hours each, and then a longer Saturday. And it kind of worked out really well, along with Slack for conversations. And then we also live streamed it on YouTube and Twitch, so people could watch in even if they didn't buy a ticket. But they just couldn't participate in some of the extra activities. So and it kind of turned out really well. This year, I think because there's so much, are things opening? We're closing, staying closed. We're not sure what's going on. So I think that's just not anything going to happen right now. But I've helped out with 3 of their conferences now. And since I moved here, it turns out I knew Justin from meeting him at Strange Loop in St. Louis once. And then as soon as I moved here, my manager for the job I had moving here was his best friend. So it's like very small world. And it's just kind of cool. Like I'm still friends with that manager even after the company fired him and then eventually fired all of us. So yeah, he and I are still friends. We talk all the time. And yeah, it's been interesting being involved here. I'm curious to see what will happen in the next month, 6 months, 2 years.
Hopeful.
Mhm.
Quiet crowd.
I guess so. Usually we have all kinds of questions.
I'm boring. I said that in the beginning.
No.
No, you
Well,
give a
so I wanna
comprehensive
recognize-
overview.
You know,
What'd you say?
Sorry, Mark.
Oh, Sarah's not boring. She gives a comprehensive overview up front.
Exactly.
She's ahead of the FAQs.
Leaves nothing to
She leaves nothing to- yeah.
question. Yeah.
You don't need
I do
me
want to
anymore
recognize
then.
Jake and
Okay.
Rachel. Are there any other Tech Elevator students in here? Because I think when's graduation again?
Next Friday.
That's exciting. So always cool to see new boot camp grads.
You're going to make your own like
finishing up.
cardboard graduation hat because you don't have any extra supplies at home. And
Well, I am now.
Right? I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, idea planted.
Nice. I want to see some pictures. Oh, while I'm thinking about it, if anyone is interested, a couple weeks ago, we started talking about a lot of people in the group enjoy communicating in TN Tech, but also we're interested in communicating outside just once a week or once every couple of weeks if we have to cancel it. And so I created a LinkedIn group, and if anybody is interested, you're welcome to join. I'll drop the link in here. Tell me if that link works for you. So check it out. If that's something you're interested in, just apply to join. I'll bring you right in.
The link
making me log in.
Why would it do that?
How dare it?
Right.
No, I have an account. I don't want to join. Gosh.
There are some sites that make that surprisingly difficult where like their standard flow is create an account and it's like, oh, I have to find the little tiny link at the bottom that says log in. I don't understand why they have to optimize for that flow.
And that's why you need to have 30 email addresses. So every time you use the site, you just make a new account.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like a business like that is just interested in capturing new business and not in like quality, but it's what it communicates to me when the, create new account button is huge. And then the, whatever the color theme for the page is, and sign in, login is just like plain text off in a corner somewhere.
Right.
Okay, I think the benign explanation is that you've probably cached your your browser's cached your login, so you're just not going to see it very often. I think, right? I hope.
Right.
Yeah.
Who knows what technology does even? I don't know.
Right.
What's the matter with UI people? That's my question.
All right. What other random things can I share with the crowd?
There's all kinds of good stuff in the bio. If there's anything that calls to you, we talked about code and supply, talked about the robotics team, which I think was super cool. I really appreciate that you do that, Sarah.
Me too. It's fun.
So what are you so you're mostly Python right now? I heard Django is what you're building Code Thesaurus in.
Yeah. The day job is in Node.
Okay, cool.
Last job
As
before
so many
that
things
was,
these days.
Yeah, last job before that was Scala and Rust, and then the job before that was PHP, and I've done contracting in between. And what was there? There's a Ruby thing and a PHP thing and I don't remember what the other one was. The job before that was like JavaScript, and then the job before that was like C# and Java. Yeah, so I've dabbled a little bit.
I think polyglot is accurate. I think
there's been a few times on my live stream where somebody's just been like, what do you think about XYZ language? And I'm like, oh no, this, like I rant on and on. But it's been one of the interesting things I found out about conferences is, sometimes groups are very clustered about like, oh, the Java people are hanging over there, and oh, the C# people are over there, and like, Sarah, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a software developer. Like, oh, I'm a JavaScript person. What are you? And I'm like, I'm not a whatever person. I'm a little bit of everything. So in that sense, like I usually don't fit in. But in the like when I land in a group and they start like, oh, have you ever heard about the latest framework in .NET things? And I'm like, yeah, I have. And I fit in as if I've been in that community for a decade. And I'm like, I've not been in this community for a decade. I just have dabbled with enough things that I understand almost everything that people bring up in group scenarios.
It's one of those, I've heard of that. Have you used it? A little bit.
Dabbled at some point. It's
right.
But it is almost like really rare before somebody pulls up with something and I'm just like, I don't actually know about this.
I find that I honestly do not do a good job keeping up if I don't kind of specialize. That I used to be like that, and I just went and and I'm specializing in .NET now, and I'm pretty much on that track, and it's like there is so freaking much to know about .NET that it just I don't try on other things. I just let other people do them.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it depends. Go ahead, Sarah, please.
I was just gonna say I totally get that because I've also struggled with the like I'm in my job now. I've done a little bit of Node before I came in, but definitely wasn't like as well versed as some of the other people here. But they just got a new principal contractor, and he just like rips things to shreds and pulls them back together. And I'm like, I don't have the foggiest idea what you are doing, because I had to pair with him once.
Yep.
And that was effectively like me just watching a TV show. Like I had no involvement in what this was happening. And it was just like, oh, this is crap. We're going to move this over here, and I'm going to click on this. And why is this not? Oh, that's why that's not.
That's not always good.
And then by the time he makes this PR, I'm just like, well, I can look over this PR and it makes sense, but I have no clue how in the heck you got here. And it's like definitely kind of a weird place in that sense. But one of the pluses I feel like it's benefited me is that I've seen more problems accomplished in different ways. So I think when I go into, I have to build this brand new thing, it's just like, I think through the 12,000 scenarios in my head and like, oh, well, this could work, except the scenario, well, that means this would work better, where I've met a lot of very, very specialized people like, well, this is the way you do it. And I'm like, well, what about this?
Could we make
why would I do that?
Could we do it without injection? Yeah, that's sort of.
It's just slightly more efficient, and just like, oh, I don't know. No, really, like, listen to me. So I feel like I'm better at thinking through problems in different ways, and sometimes like the more specialized people. But at the same time, I can't hit the ground running as fast. I have a little bit of ramp up time when I work on things. So
it is the ever eternal battle of generalist versus specialist. And it will never be settled because there is no way of settling it.
Yeah.
And
but also like when I was thrown into Scala at the last job, I'd never even seen Scala before, but surprise, it was like a lot like Haskell. Well, I had done Haskell in a project in school, and she's like, oh, well, this is making a lot of sense very quickly. And there's not been too many things nowadays where I've been dropped in and just struggled to understanding it. And I explained this to a different group once, that the hardest thing I don't think is the programming language. The hardest thing is whatever paradigm swap you're doing. So if I'm object oriented, and then I moved to functional, and then I moved to something else,
100%.
Like that way of thinking is what messes up my brain more than whatever language I'm dropped into.
The struggle I had switching languages or frameworks or whatever was not, it was not the language. It was all the environment, all the framework around it. So like, oh, my Java build is messed up. What do I do now? I guess I got to learn.
Is it Maven?
Stuff.
Is it Gradle? Is it Ant? Is it some combination of all of those?
Yeah,
is it none of
that?
Exactly.
So, it's just, I can write some code. Sure. Like, especially at the code source, like I'm just going to say, oh, give me exactly what I need. But, when I have to debug a build problem, that's not, it's behind the scenes there. That's when it gets really challenging.
Also makes a difference if you're working by yourself, Michael, and you are having trouble debugging the build problem, you are just stuck.
Right.
Whereas
you don't have anybody to go to in the same way.
Yeah.
So we are at 5. So I'm happy to go on a little bit longer, and we can continue chatting. I do want to take this chance to thank Sarah, though, and express my appreciation, and thank everyone for joining today, because it's really been a lot of fun.
Prashek, stay here. The people on the internet want to see you in your ink spots.
That is an extremely apt name, I have to say.
Yes. And for size comparison, like this is my keyboard, and you can see like the cat's longer than my keyboard.
It's like banana for size, keyboard for size.
Bigger than laptops and all those things. So yes, it's 35 pounds of cat that I own.
Cat by the pound.
It's a lot. If they sleep in particular patterns on my bed, I can't fit in the bed anymore. And I have a queen bed. It's not small. But they take up. Yeah. Oh, and one of the things I was going to say to that comment was I want Code to Source to expand just past languages too. So I think languages is a really good starting place. But what if it had various like MVC web frameworks? What if it talked about SQL versus NoSQL, but also, Microsoft's like T-SQL, SQL Server kind of SQL is different than Oracle, which is different than MySQL, which is different than Postgres. But also like MongoDB versus like some of the others that are out there. What about like, what do various like standard algorithms like graphs and stuff look like on different languages? What about?
When you get really ridiculous, you could like compare ORMs. Now we're just down a rabbit hole, and we'll just die down there.
But what if you had a website that still could compare these things?
Right, exactly.
The breadth of where this goes, can go. But I wanted to make sure I got the foundational framework done with languages, and like if this works, the other things I think can build onto that really easily. So. And also, I don't want to hype up like you can compare any languages, but we only have these 3, and you can only look up functions and classes. Like that's not really a great selling point. So I wanted to make sure, like let's build this out first, and then throw in all the rest of the kitchen sink.
I always found it interesting. This Jeff Atwood has a blog post about doing it in public, and how important it is to like talk about your wins, talk about your losses, show people all the messy stuff, right? I got the link here.
And that was one of the vulnerabilities about live streaming. It's just like, if you give a conference talk, here's my demo. I practiced it. I know it works. If not, I can probably wing it because it's a fairly short demo. When you're live coding.
Or you can replay a screencast of when it did work.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Like when
But
you're
yeah,
live coding, you're just like, I'm going into this. I haven't prepped. We're going to see where this goes. And I mean, there's been times I'm just like, I have no clue what's going on here. I don't know how to fix this. I swear. Is anybody in chat? No? I guess I'm staring at this longer.
I had that happen at a live conference talk once, and I just had somebody from the audience yell, "Sends a reserved word." It was an old language. "Sends a reserved word," like out of the crowd, like,
oh,
thanks.
Yeah. Corey Haynes found a security bug in my program once, just like on stream. And just like, nice. Oh crap, I should fix that. And fixed it on screen. Just like, yeah, well, you know, it's there now. And somebody else found the bug, and somebody's like, that language isn't right. Like, make an issue, we'll fix it. You know, and I mean, there's been times where I'm just like, I'm coding along, and somebody's like, that's not gonna work. I'm like, I don't believe you. Like, oh crap, it didn't work. Well, fine. I'll listen to chat from now on.
Yeah, and I think the industry, I think, has gotten more chill about that than I think it used to be like really bad if you got caught out making a mistake in front of people. It feels nicer now. I don't know. No?
On the scenario. So I think one of the things that works on live streaming, like I know people on YouTube and Twitch both have done this, and they've said it's generally pretty good. And the reason it's generally pretty good is you don't get much joy out of watching somebody and then just like constantly telling them they're wrong or constantly whatever. Like, and also like I can just ban people from my channel. Right. And like
the ban hammer is pretty effective.
And
ban them if they're jerks. Yeah.
Like, especially if you start small, like people aren't going to flock in and be like, you suck, and then leave. It's, you know, like they come in like, hi, what you doing? And I tell them my project, like, whoa, your project sounds cool. And then they also find out like I'm encouraging and supportive, and they can ask questions and I answer them. And, you know, the act of working on Code Thesaurus is slower by streaming it, but also more people have understood how it works and why it works and talked with me through it. They found, you know, just like I'm coding along, and there's just like, you know, that, you know, I'm just like, oh, suck. I forgot how to do this. And they're just like, oh, do this instead. Like, cool, thanks, you know, and kind of, it's really an interesting way of doing things. But also you kind of have to get used to like, there's nobody over there. It's just a text stream on part of your monitor. And so like, hi, I'm talking to you. I know there's people out there that hear me, but I can't see you. I can't hear you. I can only just see a text window flying by. So it's kind of that transition of thinking like I am still talking to people, even though I can't tell in any form or another that there's actual real people on the other end.
Does anybody have anything else? Sorry?
Maybe. I was just going to say, I'm slowly becoming famous for my puns on Twitch, which is perhaps good or bad, depending on
depending on who you talk to, that might not be a bad thing to be known for. Does anybody else stream? No? Yeah? Mark?
I do for 45 minutes at a time, because after that I can't focus.
That's fair.
Yeah. And I think I usually have literally 0 viewers, and I am like total, but it makes me do the thing. It's like, okay, it's time to stream some code. Sure.
And that's one of the reasons I started it, was I wanted that dedicated time, because otherwise just like, I have 12,000 other more important things to do than Code Thesaurus. And like this is for me. I started it for me. I'm just coincidentally, I guess, dragging other people along for the fun, pleasure, torture, whatever.
You created a habit. You created a structure to reinforce that habit, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. And there's also this, Twitch tries really hard to gamify everything. And the reason they're doing it is they want to make money. So the more they can make me get more attention and get more subscriptions and whatever. Like they make money from this, and I'm kind of like, I'm here to work on a fun project for me. And if people show up, great. If people don't show up, great. Yeah, bye. So I'm like, I'm not doing it for the money. I know I'm not going to get rich off this thing. But it's like I'm here for working on it. I love the sort of baby community that's popped up from this. Like there's just people that are more than happy to work on simple little open source things. And I'm like, that makes you an open source contributor. Even if you like change one line in my project, you are now a open source contributor. And it's also been really cool to see all the women that have contributed to. Just like, yay.
That's cool.
Especially since open source tends to be a very toxic sort of world. That I've helped make a slightly happier spot out there.
I see a lot of people unmuting, so I'm wondering if somebody's about to chime in.
Nope. Okay.
My brain is fried today.
Have you been getting nice weather in Columbus as well?
It has been beautiful, except that it rained for about 2 hours today, but it was like 80 some degrees yesterday, so it's been wonderful.
Yeah. Something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad for the warmer weather though.
It's nice. Gotta get out and do some hiking. Maybe I can do that this weekend. That would be nice. Mm-hmm. My weekends have been very full lately.
Do whatever you're gonna do, but on a hike.
Yeah.
Take your laptop with you as you're like walking down the trail.
Right. I'll have to design some type of like thing, and then I trip, and then like, oh, you didn't want that laptop screen, did you?
No. You didn't mean to drop your pancreas in the puddle of water on the ground? No.
It does appear that you've wrapped it up though, right? Is it waterproof or not?
It is not waterproof. So this cute little pouch, I found there's like a woman that had a diabetic child and she started making little pouches for all of her things. And then somebody's like, sell them on eBay or what? Etsy. That's what it's called. And so she started doing things. I'm like, oh, I'll buy this cute little pouch. It's basically like falling to shreds. Like it's just like coming apart. That
is not waterproof in any way.
This hook's on my belt, and there's been multiple times where my phone has started chiming in, just like I'm not doing anything. What's going on? And it's like, wait, what? Like you should be fine. What's going on? And then I look, I just have an empty pouch because I found out it's loose enough that the stuff fell out in my car. So I go out into my car and like, sure enough, right there on my seat is like my little electronic chip and battery. I'm like, so that's why it wears a rubber band now.
At least it was just in your car and not somewhere else.
Yes. I have wondered what happens when this wanders to some other destination. And
you should put a tile on it.
Ooh, I like it. I worried a little bit when I went to London and Oslo because it's effectively like a small cell phone. So like it goes through security like a cell phone would, but just like what happens if it drops somewhere? What happens if it like quits working and I'm like in a foreign country? What happens when I'm on a plane for 6 or more hours and it doesn't have internet access? What happens when, there's a lot of interesting variables, and it's just like, what happens when, one of the weirdest things was the time zone shift was so great going to Europe that your body is sort of used to a certain ebb and flow of the insulin it needs. And because I had shifted that, my pancreas thought like, oh, well, this is the new time. You need this much in the morning and this much in the evening. Like, no, that my body was throwing a fit when all that happened. That got really weird. And I also because the food is awkward at conferences, like you just
Mhm.
don't know what you're getting, so you can't really
Mhm.
plan for it. And then if you ever go
Mhm.
touristing, you're exercising a lot, which is using up extra blood sugar.
Mhm.
And so I have to start like doing awkward things where I'm accounting for like, oh, hey, my friend Abby and I are going to the fjords later. Like, cool. Okay, well, I need to make sure I have like extra glucose things, but I also ran out of glucose things. So there was a period of time when she and I were like wandering around Norwegian pharmacies trying to go like, do you have glucose tablets? Like glucose tablets? Like, like how do I explain this to them? Like,
Sugar.
yeah, sugar in a pill. Yeah, pre-processed sugar in a pill. Like, I don't know.
Right.
My Norwegian's not that great, and by not that great, I mean I don't know Norwegian.
Might actually get something else.
It's yeah, so like that was a fun adventure, but yeah, good, interesting little experiments in taking my pancreas places.
Yeah. Well, I think it's coming time to wind things down. We need to do dinner with my family here, and
yeah, I see more people looking off on computer screens, and it's like, oh, Sarah, shut up. I'm like, yeah, I have Twitter to look at. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Priorities, right? Yeah. So thank you, everybody. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes.
I hope that you have a good weekend, and that I look forward to seeing you next Thursday.
Thanks for dragging me in to bore everybody. I appreciate it.
No, it was wonderful. Stop. It's been really nice to learn about the stuff that you're working on. So thank you. Cool.
Bye.
I'm going to stop recording now.